are joined with Heather Rankin, who is up for a Juno this year. So congratulations on that.
Thanks. It's so incredible. Because when I set out to make a solo record, it was just more or less to prove to myself that I could take it on and that I had something to say in my music. But to be acknowledged by the industry is just, it's the most incredible feeling. It's affirmation that you're on the right track.
We'll get into that a bit later, but first I read that you were actually pursuing a career in acting before you joined the Rankins.
Yeah, it was something as a kid that I aspired to, and I actually, when I went to university, that's what I studied. And my intention was to pursue that direction. But I was also dabbling in music with my family, throughout my life. But in the late 80s, we got together one summer and did a show called the Mabu Jig, and that led to making a record, which led to, a short-term commitment, so we thought. And before I knew it, I was, doing that for 10 years. And it was difficult for me to balance the two, because acting, it's not like a one-off. You have to commit time, and it's hard work, and there's a lot of skill involved. So you can't just, do it on the side. It's something you really have to be committed to. And it was difficult because I would have had to, break the stride with the family. And so I put that on the back burner. But recently I've been doing a little bit, some live theater, and I did a few appearances in film. So, yeah.
You were part of what I call Rankin 2.0, more or less the second group of the Rankins, because, a lot of them, when they went off to college, you and Jimmy and a few of the younger siblings replaced the older ones. I want to mention, though, when you guys disbanded, did you dive back into acting, or what exactly did you do?
Early on, I did introduce myself to the theater community. By that time, I think I was a little bit afraid. I think I was a lot afraid, actually, because by that point, most of the actors working in the community had 10 or 15 years experience under their belt. And as I was saying, theater is not something you can just throw yourself into. You can study it, but the real learning happens in the process, on the stage, with other actors working and developing your characters and honing that skill. So I was, I had tried out a few productions, and then I ended up sort of getting sidelined with three of my sisters. There was an old general store which had been converted to a pub.
The Red Shoe Pub.
In our community of Mabu, called the Red Shoe, that's right. And it was up for sale. And it just seemed like such a shame to us because it had become a venue for people to perform music. And people were looking for a place, a destination on that side of the island, because we'd been out singing about it and singing about the people and the experience of growing up in that part of the world. And so the four of us got together and just sort of naively bought this pub, and I was all gung-ho to manage it. And that's what I actually, for a few years, I did that. And then again, I started to pursue theater after that. The most of the work that I've done on stage in theater has happened in the last 5 or 6 years. I was doing all kinds of things, really, but I did continue to perform with Cookie and Raylene. We had recorded a Christmas record in '97, and every year we were able to go out and tour with that record. As those opportunities became less frequent, that's when I really started to think about pursuing a solo career.
And you just mentioned, of course, Raylene and Cookie. Now, I got a two-parter for you, and I'll start with the funny side of this. Is who came up with the name Cookie?
I don't know. We were bad for nicknames in our house. Everybody at some point had a nickname. And don't take this the wrong way, but I was called Dick until I went to school. My teacher refused to call me that. That was my name. That's what I answered to. And I think it had something to do with the reader. There was a preschool book, Dick, Tom, and Jane, I think is what it was. I still have the book. So sorry. We all had nicknames, but Cookies is the one that really stuck.
Yeah, it seems like going from Cookie to Dick is a big change. It's almost
I
like
definitely lost out on that one.
I can imagine your mom calling you in for dinner and saying, like Jimmy, Cookie, Dick, and then you're just like, yeah, no, that's me. I know. I got to come in for supper now.
One of my brothers still calls me by that name. It's so bizarre, isn't it? I don't wonder if it's something to do with our culture. I don't know. Probably not. But we used to keep a boarder at our house. We grew up in a house with 3 bedrooms and a walk-in attic, had 1 bathroom and no shower, but we still had room for boarders. But one of our boarders was Umpsy Murray, and he was really one of those people who loved giving me nicknames. He's actually the person that Jimmy wrote the song Malcolm Murray about.
You just mentioned about your sisters and how you bought the Red Shoe Pub. Which sister were you closest to?
We're all close, but I think I was very close with Raylene, and I think it had a lot to do with, she was 8 or 9 years older than I am, and I think she had a lot of responsibilities growing up in a family with a lot of siblings. A lot of the responsibility was spread out over the older kids. They acted as parents a lot of the time, and Raylene had a very maternal instinct. And I often think of my childhood. She was often the person who bathed me and put me to bed and read me, and I remember her being my go-to a lot of the time, because my mother started to work at the age of I was about 4 years old. And I don't know, that was part of it, but she was just very protective and encouraging and loving. All of my family are in different ways, and it's hard to connect with everybody all the time. We live in different parts of the world, but I'm also very close with Cookie. I think it's just a natural thing. We have a bond, having spent so much time together.
And if you don't mind me asking, how tough was it when you found out of Raylene's passing?
Well, I don't know if you have any experience with cancer, but it's a very gradual thing. It's devastating when somebody receives a diagnosis. And she was young. She was only 40 years old. And it was just a year after John Morris had passed. It was really tough. And she had a 4-year-old son. It's hard. I still miss her. I'm still grieving, although it's been 5 years. I don't know if it's what happens when you get older. You just don't bounce back the same. But, I still get emotional when people bring her name up. It's tough.
You've been nominated for Juno and an East Coast Music Award. Which one do you value most, or are they both equally as valuable?
That's a good question. When you make music, it's not about awards. You're not thinking about being nominated for awards. Make the music. I guess it's a way of connecting with people. You hope that it resonates with people. It's fulfilling. It's an amazing process. But, it's a compliment. It's a compliment from the people in the industry. And it's encouragement to keep doing what you're doing. And, it's evidence that what you are doing is resonating. Yeah, the awards are great, but it's not what it's about. It really isn't. It's a wonderful feeling, but it's not why we make music. And I don't know if I can say if I have a preference. It's nice that people in my backyard are appreciating what I'm doing, but it's also a really great feeling to know that, my music isn't just resonating regionally, that people in the industry across the country recognize it as being worthy of being in a category with Celine Dion and Sarah McLachlan and Chantal Kreviazek. These are 3 of Canada's most talented and successful, not just women, but artists in Canada's music history.
When you were in the Rankin Family, I've noticed that each one of you kind of have, because I've got a few of the songs on my iPod, thanks to my parents, but of course I listen to it as well. It seems like there's different ones that each one of you have your own kind of intro, or some songs it sounds like there's more female vocals than the male side. For example, my favorite one to listen to every now and again is Moving On. And I think you're the one who starts that song.
Yeah. You know what? I remember On most records, I would dig out cassettes that Jimmy had given me, songs that he'd written. And I remember bringing that to the group. I'd listened to a tape of his, and I think the first instinct was, it might be just outside the box for us. And then we tried it, and I think it's great. It's one of those songs that we would have performed at a pig and whistle to get people up boogieing. And I really liked the song, and I liked what it was saying. I guess, I started the song, but I don't know if it was just how it sort of unfolded in the rehearsal, or I tended to have I think maybe slightly purer voice, and sometimes I would start off the song and it would build dynamically. Yeah. But I'm not sure that's how it unfolded. I can't remember that far back.
No, I mean that's fair. I just remember because you can find the videos there on YouTube, and I remember watching it when I was smaller and watching CMT, and the moment that the Rankins came on, Jimmy's song came on, or an Ennis sister came on, or Ennis sisters were on the countdown. I was thinking to myself, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "This is great. It's small. It just brought out the culture side, because you're so used to watching CMT and seeing at that time like a Tim McGraw or a Garth Brooks, and I'm not saying that kind of country isn't good. I like it, but to have that kind of fiddle music or an East Coast kind of music showing on CMT was definitely something a little bit encouraging and that kind of struck home.
Absolutely, some of the best music in the country comes out of the East Coast.
The other thing I want to mention too is, of course, now in 2017, like I mentioned a few times already, you're up for the Juno and an ECMA, or East Coast Music Award. When did you start working on that album?
It took me a while to just be able to say that I'm making a solo record. I guess just being in that dynamic of having family around me most of my life, whether in a personal setting or a business setting, it was a huge leap for me to make a record. And when I set out to make the record, I had some ideas about directions to take. I'd been writing some songs, and I went out and I worked with a few people. And really, from start to finish, working with David Tyson, it took about 3 years. It's a long process. It wasn't like, full on. I'd go down to Los Angeles for a couple of weeks. We'd try to write a song. We'd go away. We'd come back and work at that song. We might do some bed tracks for that song. But that's why it just took a while, because I didn't have all of the songs going into the project, and I really wasn't clear about the direction I was going to take. Because I could have made a traditional record, I could have made a folky record, I could have made a country record, but I was very careful in deciding which direction I was going to take. And I think I didn't know, but I subconsciously knew that I wanted to do something that was different, that set me apart from what I'd always done with my family.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. I mean, because when I'm looking back at it, and you look at the Rankin family, and you see how Jimmy went, you kind of wanted to go in your own route as well, which makes sense, because you always want to show that you're just not I guess in the sense of a one-trick pony. You can be, when you have a bit of talent, you can go and show people, like, this is what I've done with this crowd, and now I can do this on my own and show them that there are more layers.
Yeah, well, I think that over the course of 10 years that we toured as a family, and of course all the years of experience before that, each of us were evolving in our own way. And I feel that on the last record, I was just starting to sort of push the envelope a little bit with some of the choices I was making, like Long Way to Go, and picking that song Moving On for the group. I think I wanted to explore and see what I was capable of. And I was willing to accept if it wasn't good at the end of it, that it wasn't worthy of releasing. But, I think the songs are good. You should be able to produce them in different ways. And I was just, part of that came from the fact that David, a very important part of that, David Tyson, came up through the pop world. And when you put different kinds of artists coming from two different music worlds together, you often end up with a really interesting sound. Some of my favorite records are the collaborations from people from different music worlds.
Yeah, and speaking of that, you actually on this, I believe it's on this album, you teamed up with a East Coast rapper.
I did.
That's to me, when I read that earlier, I was just like, there's no way that happened. But when I read it, I was just like, I'm going to bring it up to her and figure out how this come about.
Well, it was something, again, it was an experiment. I was willing to accept if it didn't work out in the end that we wouldn't go forward with it. But again, it was, I sometimes felt in the Rankin music, we would experiment with things like spoken word or, putting in a loop in songs. And I just loved that. I thought it was so interesting and different. And I thought, why not go like the complete opposite end of the spectrum from a completely different music genre and incorporate that into a song that was a hit when I was a teenager back in the 80s. And I think we successfully arranged it and recorded it as just a song. But I wanted one more element that sort of brought it to the present day, with something that would contemporize it even more. And it was just something I had a mutual friend. We had a mutual friend, Quake Matthews and I. And I said to him, do you think your friend would be willing to try some stuff on this? And he was like, yeah, I'll give him a call. And he got on board, no questions asked. And he was a real trooper. And I like what he says. I think it's a really interesting version of the song.
I don't know how much you listen to the rap music, but have you ever heard the artist Classified?
Yeah, he's an artist from this part of the world.
Would you ever collaborate with Classified?
Absolutely. I never say no. I always consider carefully any kind of invitation like that.
My parents, especially my mom, wanted to mention this. She really liked the song "We Rise Again."
Yeah.
And she said, I'm trying to remember who it was. I think she said that was you and Anne Murray and a few other Nova Scotians that did a really bang-on performance of that. Is that one of the songs that you're really proud of?
That song was written by a Cape Breton songwriter by the name of Leon Dubinsky. And Raylene was introduced to the song one summer. She was performing in a show called The Rise and Follies of Cape Breton Island. And she sang that song, and it was beautifully written, and it suited her voice. And so when we made our third record, she decided she wanted to do another version of the song so she could perform it with the Rankin Family. And the message of the song, it universally resonates with people. And she sang it from the time she was a young girl, and I think it was on an Anne Murray television special that was filmed up in Cape Breton, and we were guests on the special. And I think Anne took a verse, and Raylene may have taken a verse. I think, was Rita McNeil also on that special? I
believe so, yeah.
I think so. It's a song that will live on. It was a song that Raylene was always very proud of and loved singing because it was really about, living. Oh, well, whatever you want it to be about, but it was about continuing on through your children.
Yeah, I can't remember how old I was when I've seen it, but I believe she was maybe 12 or 13, or she could have been even 16 at the time. There's another Nova Scotia artist, her name just bypasses me now, but she had a concert on CBC at the time, and she performed that song.
Could it have been Aslan Debison?
Yes, there you go. That was like when I was first exposed to the song in that aspect, and then I remember my parents telling me like, oh, you should definitely check out the Rankins version of doing it, and then I was like, okay, and then that's kind of where I was exposed to your style of music as well. You were on, I believe it was, with Johnny Harris, still standing, showing about Mabu. How did that come about, and how fun was that to do? I
believe the producers of that show reached out to a volunteer organization in the area, and they weren't sure how to pursue it. And so I think somebody suggested they contact the Red Shoe, and I think it was off season at that point. So somehow it got redirected to me, and I just said, "Hey, yeah, you're picking a great place. If you want to feature an interesting place, come to Mabu. Great people, incredible music, beautiful scenically." And so I was just back and forth with the producers of that show and making suggestions about what they could do while we were there. We were supposed to go snowmobiling, but there was no snow. So we ended up going out on four-wheelers. And I was driving one of these giant, 3-ton machines, and I weigh like 100 pounds. And there was still ice on the old railway trails, and I think at one point I almost headed to the water. But yeah, it was fun. It was an interesting experience bopping around the town with Johnny and the crew. Nice fellow and really clever what they do. They only spend a few days in the community, but they're able to summarize what they've learned and incorporate it into the history of the place, and then present it to a live audience in a comedic way. It's really well done and very clever, and he's a great talent, Johnny.
And will you be at the Junos here in Ottawa?
I'm going to go, yeah. You know what? One of the things I don't have regrets, but one of the things I often think about was how in the days of working with my family, it was rare that we had the time to take pause and celebrate the great things that were happening. I think for the most part it was just that we couldn't. We were so busy with a treadmill, you couldn't stop, and you had to stay healthy and you had to stay rested. But we could have celebrated more when things were happening, because that doesn't happen to everyone, and it doesn't usually happen twice in your lifetime that you have that kind of success. So I'm definitely going. I already feel like I've won just being able to record a record. But to be nominated, I'm going to go. I'm going to go and celebrate with David and my husband and make a memory of it.
Well, then hopefully we'll see you there, because I'm hoping to go to the Junos myself.
Okay, well, I don't know what you look like, but you know what I look like. Come find me.
That's going to do it for this episode of Tobin Tonight. Our thanks to Heather Rankin for coming on the show. Remember, you can find past, present, and future episodes on TobinTonight.com, Spotify, and iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and leave a comment or two. For Tobin and myself, this is Jacob saying, Heather Rankin is a treasure. She's the Betty White of Nova Scotia. By that, I mean no one hates her. Thanks for listening, and good night.